I thought meeting my boyfriend's wealthy family would be the start of our future. Instead, I walked into a trap set by the foster sister I once loved and trusted. In one night, she destroyed my relationship, my reputation, and nearly my mother's chance to live. But just as I hit rock bottom, a stranger I'd once helped stepped in with the truth, the power, and the will to save me. Now I have my life back, but would you forgive someone who tried to ruin you or watch them burn in their own lies? If you were in my shoes, would you let revenge take the wheel or walk away knowing the truth has already won? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that prove kindness can be the sharpest weapon. I didn't realize how hard it was raining until my heels slipped on the slick pavement and icy water splashed up the back of my legs. My coat had been useless against the storm for at least 20 minutes now, and the damp had soaked straight through my dress, clinging to my skin like some second unwanted layer. Streetlights blurred into halos, their glow smeared across puddles as the wind knifed through my hair. Every step away from that mansion felt like I was trying to outrun a nightmare. Only the nightmare kept pace, whispering every humiliating word back into my ear. I wanted to blame the cold for the sting in my eyes, but we both know better. Just 2 hours earlier, I'd thought tonight would be something, a turning point. After nearly a year together, Ethan Carter, my boyfriend, my maybe this is the one, had invited me to dinner with his family. He'd said it so casually, with that easy, reassuring smile that always smoothed the sharp edges of my doubts. "It's time you meet them, Rach. You're important to me." Those words had echoed in my head all afternoon while I baked at the shop. Then again, as I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, smoothing the fabric of the deep green dress I'd made myself. I'd picked it for a reason. It was elegant, understated, the kind of dress you could wear into a room full of strangers and still feel like yourself. I'd even let Chloe, my 22-year-old foster sister, borrow my silver clutch for the night because she'd accidentally been invited to. She'd smiled sweetly when she told me Ethan's mom had insisted she come. Chloe always smiled sweetly. That was the thing about her. On the surface, she was the kind of girl everyone liked. Pretty, polite, always with the right compliment ready. But under that gloss was something sharper, something that had always been aimed at me. I told myself I was overthinking it, that Chloe being there wouldn't matter. The Carters' home was the kind of place that didn't just have a front door. It had a statement entrance. Stone columns, a manicured drive, warm, golden light spilling out from massive windows. I stood there on the steps for a second, breathing in, willing my nerves to settle. The butler? Yes, they had a butler. Opened the door and ushered me in. Ethan was waiting in the foyer, looking devastatingly handsome in a navy suit. For a moment, the tension in my chest loosened. He kissed my cheek and murmured, "You look beautiful." It didn't last. We entered the dining room, and there they were, Ethan's parents, both dressed like they'd stepped straight out of a lifestyle magazine. His father stood to shake my hand. His mother didn't. She just looked me over in one slow, calculating sweep, like she was scanning for flaws. "Rachel," she said, voice smooth and cool, "we've heard some things about you." Chloe was already seated at the far end of the table, next to Ethan's mother, laughing at something she'd just whispered. I caught the tail end. "She's very passionate about her little bakery." Then, in a tone that was almost affectionate, "She works so hard, bless her heart. If you're from the South, you know exactly what bless her heart means. Dinner began, and it didn't take long before the questions started. Not the get to know you kind, the probing kind. Where did you go to school? A 2-year culinary program. Why not a full university? I wanted to start working, help support my mom. Do you rent or own your apartment? Is baking sustainable? It pays the bills. Each answer landed like a tiny weight in the room, pulling the air down around me. I waited for Ethan to step in, to say something, anything, to break the tension. Instead, he just shifted in his seat, eyes fixed on his plate. At one point, Chloe leaned toward his mother, her voice low, but not low enough. I told her she should really think about broadening her horizons. They both smiled. The thing about smiling, sometimes it's just baring teeth. By the time the main course was cleared, my appetite was gone. My pulse was roaring in my ears. I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate, looked at Ethan, and forced my voice to stay steady. Thank you for dinner. I should get going early morning tomorrow. No one stopped me. Ethan didn't follow. He didn't even look up when I pushed back my chair. So here I am now, walking through a downpour, mascara stinging my eyes, arms wrapped tight around myself. Somewhere behind me, in that mansion, Chloe is probably leaning into Ethan, smiling that sweet smile of hers. And my name is already being carved into a story I'll have no control over. I thought meeting his family would be the first step toward a future together. Instead, it feels like I just walked into the beginning of my own undoing. When I was a kid, I thought the world was just me and my mom against, well, everything. No dad, no siblings, no safety net. Just Linda Monroe and her little girl in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the east side of Portland. The walls were thin enough that I could hear our neighbors arguing, laughing, living entire lives just on the other side of peeling drywall. Mom worked the front desk at a dental clinic, smiling through back pain and fatigue like it was her job, which I guess it was. She had this uncanny way of making things seem lighter than they were. When she'd come home after a long shift, she'd shrug off her coat and say, "So, Rach, what did you dream about today?" I didn't know until I was older that she'd been asking because she wanted me to have dreams bigger than the rent due on the first of the month. I learned early that Mom wasn't like other moms. Not in a bad way. She was just fragile in a way most people couldn't see. Kidney problems. The kind that made her pale if she walked too far or worked too many hours. She never used it as an excuse. If anything, it made her fiercer. She told me once, "I wasn't supposed to have children, but I couldn't imagine my life without you, so here you are." I think about that a lot now, how she fought for me before I even existed. We got by, mostly because Mom was stubborn as hell, and I learned to be independent before most kids could even boil water. I cooked simple meals, did the laundry, handled errands. I didn't mind. It was our rhythm, just the two of us. And then came Chloe. I was 15 when she moved in, a 10-year-old girl with wide green eyes and a tragic story. Her mother, one of Mom's oldest friends, had died suddenly, and there was no father in the picture. Mom didn't even hesitate. She signed the papers, gave Chloe the second bedroom, and told me we're her family now. At first, I tried. I really did. I let her borrow my clothes, helped her with homework, defended her when kids at school teased her for being the new girl. But Chloe had this way of turning kindness into a weapon. She'd smile sweetly in front of Mom, then snap at me when we were alone. She made snide comments about how I dressed, how I smelled faintly of flour from my after-school bakery job, how guys don't like girls with rough hands. Still, Mom never saw it. Chloe was careful like that. By the time I was 18, I knew what I wanted: to bake. Not the box mix kind you toss together for a bake sale, but real, from-scratch creations. Cakes layered like architecture, sugar work so delicate it looked like glass. I scraped together every spare dollar to enroll in a 2-year culinary program. When I graduated, Mom cried so hard you'd think I'd just been crowned queen of something. Chloe, on the other hand, just tilted her head and said, 2 years? That's cute. Most people go to real universities. I started small, taking orders from neighbors, then friends of friends. Weddings, birthdays, anniversaries. Every cake I made was like a little piece of me. I'd work until my back ached and my eyes blurred from focusing on piping details so fine they looked like lace. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Ethan came into my life during one of those I should probably go out and be a human moments my friend Jenna forced on me. He was polished but not pretentious, or so I thought. The kind of man who made you feel seen in a crowded room. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe my hard work had led me somewhere. To someone. Chloe noticed, of course. She noticed everything when it came to men with money. She'd tease me about how lucky I was, then not so subtly fish for details about where he took me, what he bought me, how much his watch probably cost. There was a glint in her eye I didn't like, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then, little things started happening. Once, Ethan mentioned something I'd only told Chloe, about how Mom's medical bills sometimes kept me up at night. Another time, his mother asked me about all those little side jobs I did, using a tone that made it sound like I was hustling on the street corner. I didn't connect the dots then. Now I know exactly where those dots led. The night of that dinner, sitting across from Chloe and Ethan's mother as they exchanged polite daggers wrapped in smiles, I realized something I should have seen years ago. Chloe wasn't just living under my roof. She'd been waiting, watching, collecting ammunition, and she'd just loaded the first bullet. The night I met Maggie Thompson, the rain hadn't started yet, but the air felt heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. I'd decided to take the streetcar to the Carter's estate. Ethan had promised he'd meet me there because something at the office was running late. Chloe had already left an hour earlier. She'd given me one of those faux sympathetic smiles before she walked out the door. Don't be nervous, Rach. They'll appreciate you for who you are. I should have heard the venom laced in the sugar. The streetcar was nearly empty. I was scrolling through my phone when I heard a voice. A woman's voice, low and trembling. At the front, a small figure in a beige coat and a knitted hat was speaking to the conductor. Please, I need to get to Providence Hospital. My grandson's there. I'll pay you tomorrow, I swear. The conductor sighed. Ma'am, I can't let you ride without fare. Rules are rules. People stared at their shoes. The city's a master class in selective deafness. You can watch someone drowning 3 feet from shore and convince yourself you never saw it happen. I don't know what made me stand up. Maybe it was the way she clutched an old floral fabric bag, like it held her whole life. Maybe it was because I'd seen that kind of quiet desperation before on my mom's face. When she was trying not to show me how scared she was about a late bill or another doctor's appointment, I walked up and pulled a couple bills from my wallet. "Here," I said, handing them to the conductor. "2 fares." The woman turned toward me, startled. Her eyes were soft but clouded with worry. "Oh no, sweetheart, I can't." "It's fine," I said with a smile I didn't entirely feel. "Sit down." "Which hospital?" She hesitated, then said, "Providence. My grandson, he had an accident. They say he'll be all right, but I need to be there." "Then you definitely shouldn't be standing here arguing," I told her. Relief flickered across her face as she took a seat across from me. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice warmer this time. "Maggie Thompson. And you are Rachel Monroe." She nodded, like she was locking it away somewhere. "Rachel, you've got a kind heart. The world doesn't see enough of that anymore." We rode mostly in silence after that. When the streetcar pulled up to her stop, she stood, clutching her bag, and turned to me. "I'll remember this, sweetheart." I just smiled. People say that sort of thing all the time. I didn't think it meant anything. What I didn't notice, what I couldn't have noticed, was Chloe. She'd boarded 2 stops after me, sliding into a seat near the back. She must have seen the whole thing because later that night, at the Carters' dining table, Ethan's mother casually mentioned that Rachel was seen on the streetcar talking to someone questionable. Chloe sat there, demure, sipping her wine, the perfect picture of innocence. "She's very generous," Chloe said with a little laugh. "Even when it's not smart." It was a throwaway comment to anyone else, but I know now it was another seed planted. Every little story she fed Ethan's mother became part of the quiet, damning narrative. Rachel's naive. Rachel's reckless. Rachel doesn't understand our world. By the time I stepped off the streetcar that night, drizzle had begun to fall, the kind that seeps into your clothes before you even notice. The Carters' mansion loomed at the end of a long, curved drive, all warm light and wealth. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and told myself to focus. Had no idea that in less than 3 hours, I'd walk out of that house with my confidence stripped bare, my dignity in shreds, and the feeling that I'd just been marked for something far worse than judgment over a dinner table. Because here's the thing about predators. They don't always lunge. Sometimes they circle. They wait. And if they're patient enough, they'll let you walk right into their jaws, smiling all the way. And Chloe? She was patient. It started with my mom collapsing in the kitchen. One second, she was laughing, telling me to stop fussing over the frosting on a cake I was delivering the next morning. And the next, she was on the floor, pale, clutching her side. I dropped to my knees, heart hammering, trying to get her to breathe through the pain. The ER doctors were fast but blunt. Her kidneys are failing. She needs a transplant soon. Soon turned into within the next months after the specialist reviewed her labs. Without it, they said, her risk of complete organ failure was high. The cost? A number that didn't feel real. $120,000. I spent the next week on the phone, charities, assistance programs, even crowdfunding sites. Most were polite refusals. One woman told me, if you had young kids or a tragic accident, you'd have better luck getting donors to care. That was the moment I understood how cruel the world could be when your tragedy wasn't marketable. In desperation, I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm like nothing had happened at the dinner. For a second, I let myself hope. Then, my mom, she needs a kidney transplant. It's urgent. I've tried everything, but we don't have the money. I thought maybe you could help. I'd pay you back every cent. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. Rach, I can't believe we're here already. What does that mean? My mom warned me about this. Said if things didn't work out, you might. Ethan, this isn't about me. This is about my mom's life. Yeah, well, I'm sorry she's sick, but I'm not a bank. You'll figure something out. And then he hung up. I sat there staring at my phone like it had just slapped me. 2 days later, Chloe came into my room holding a coffee and wearing the kind of smile people have when they're about to say something they've been dying to spill. And we've been talking. I felt my stomach turn. About what? She hesitated, like she was gathering her courage for some painful truth. I didn't want to tell you like this, but we made a mistake. We were drinking, and her hand went to her stomach. I'm pregnant, Rach. The air left my lungs in a rush. You're lying. Her expression shifted, soft pity in her eyes, but her lips curved, just barely. It's not a lie. And Ethan, he's going to do the right thing. He's choosing to be a father. That was the moment I knew I'd been played. This wasn't an accident. This had been planned. The dinner, the whispers, every little seed of doubt planted in Ethan's mind. And now, the coup de grace, a fake pregnancy that gave them both a free pass to erase me from his life. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Social media posts, whispers at the bakery, customers canceling orders without explanation. Someone even left an anonymous note taped to the door. Gold digger. Chloe and Ethan didn't just take my relationship. They gutted my reputation and left it bleeding in the street. The worst part? People believed them. It's easier to believe the ugly thing than the quiet truth. I remember standing outside the hospital that afternoon, rain soaking through my jacket, staring at the glass doors I couldn't bring myself to walk through. Mom was upstairs, thinking I was out running errands. How could I tell her that while her body was failing, my life had been burned to the ground? I pressed my palms to my face, willing myself not to cry. Not here, not where anyone could see. But grief doesn't care about dignity. It poured out of me anyway, hot and bitter, until I felt like the rain might just wash me off the sidewalk entirely. And that's when I heard a voice, calm, steady. Rachel. I turned, and there he was, Daniel Thompson. A man I'd never met, but somehow, in that moment, he looked like the only solid thing in a world that had just turned to quicksand. When I turned and saw him, I recognized the face before I could place the name. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of man who looked like he could buy the building you were standing in and not bother to mention it. I'm Daniel Thompson, he said, stepping closer. My grandmother, Maggie, she told me about you. It took a beat for my brain to connect the dots. The streetcar, the beige coat, the woman clutching her bag like it held her last shred of hope. You're her grandson, I said, my voice cracking. He nodded. She said you helped her when no one else would. And now you're sitting out here in the rain, looking like the world just took a swing at you. I tried to smile, but it broke halfway. It's been a week. He didn't push, just waited. And something about the way he looked at me, not pity, not suspicion, but patience, made me spill everything. The failed transplant funding, Ethan's refusal, Chloe's pregnancy, the rumors, the cancellations, the way my name had turned sour in people's mouths overnight. By the time I was done, my voice was shaking so badly I could barely breathe. As I was plunged into Gabriel, Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you want me to fix this?" It was such a strange question, I almost laughed. "You can't fix this. This isn't a cake you can rebake." "Rachel," he said, his tone like steel under silk, "you don't know what I can do." The next 48 hours were a blur. Daniel moved like a man who never heard the word no. He had lawyers calling me before I'd even had my morning coffee. A private investigator digging into Chloe's timeline. IT specialists tracing anonymous posts back to accounts linked, surprise, to Chloe and Ethan. By the third day, he had the kind of evidence you couldn't explain away. Text messages between Chloe and Ethan discussing how to make Rachel look unstable. Screenshots of Chloe's search history for fake positive pregnancy test. Even a video from a hotel security camera showing them laughing over drinks the night they claimed a mistake happened. Daniel didn't just hand me the proof. He delivered it to the right people. Ethan's father, the bakery clients who'd canceled, and most devastatingly, to the same gossip pages that had smeared me. It was like watching a building implode in slow motion. The sympathy for Chloe evaporated. The poor girl narrative crumbled. Suddenly, the comments flipped. So she lied? Rachel was telling the truth this whole time? Chloe's disgusting. Ethan tried calling me once. I didn't answer. When Daniel told me he'd also arranged to cover my mom's surgery costs in full, I didn't know whether to cry or argue. "You've done too much," I told him. He just shook his head. "You did something for my grandmother when you had nothing to gain. That's not common. People like you deserve to have someone in your corner." The surgery happened within a week. 6 hours of pacing in a waiting room, my chest tight, my fingers aching from clutching my phone. Daniel stayed the whole time, sitting beside me like he belonged there, occasionally breaking the silence with small questions about my bakery plans. When the surgeon came out, smiling, and said, "It went perfectly. She's stable," I felt something inside me finally exhale. The months after were a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. Mom got stronger. My name slowly cleaned itself of the mud Chloe had flung at it. And Daniel, he kept showing up, bringing flowers for Mom, coffee for me, asking about my dream bakery like it was a foregone conclusion. One afternoon, he slid a folder across my kitchen table. "Lease agreement," he said. "Corner space downtown, perfect foot traffic. I'll invest. Silent partner. If you want it." I stared at him. "Why?" His eyes softened. "Because you're worth betting on. And because I want to see what you can build." when no one's trying to tear you down. 9 months later, Monroe Cakes opened its doors. On opening day, Mom stood beside me holding a bouquet Daniel had sent. Maggie was in the front row with tears in her eyes, and Daniel, he was at the back, watching with that quiet, proud smile I'd come to know. Chloe wasn't there. Neither was Ethan, and that absence felt like the cleanest victory of all. Family isn't always who you share a roof with. Sometimes it's the people who stand in the storm with you and pull you back into the light when you can't see it yourself. And Daniel, he never once doubted me.